He was always pleasantly high, shall we say, in a good sense, and he just loved what he was doing. And back to the shooting angle, you know, instead of keeping it hush-hush, you know, like Randy said, he blew it up. He turned this into, you know, a way to draw the fans into the amphitheater. Hey, this fan was so upset he shot 5 people, and he made it into a plus. He turned the negative into a plus. And
didn't he make it sound like that he was trying to shoot Bockwinkel but hit the fans?
Yeah, they were going after Bockwinkel and Heenan, and he just...
Heenan, that's who he put the heat on.
Yeah, he put the heat on Heenan, and he just... he turned this into something, you know, he talked about that for months and months and months and months. And did the attendance at the amphitheater go down? No.
No, it went up probably.
It was sold out for, I believe, 48 shows in a row. And they had one show a month, and it was sold out for 48, 50 shows in a row.
Can you imagine?
And they had UHF television only, where you had the little rabbit ears to get it.
WSNS.
Yeah.
Channel 44.
And WCI, was it CIU then?
You had Channel 26.
You
it
had
was right for Taste of, remember it used to, oh man, Taste of Yugoslavia.
Taste of Yugoslavia, and the bullfighting. They used to have the bullfighting.
That was before Taste of Yugoslavia,
the bullfighting. But you had no internet. You had no.
What was the reaction of the men in the ring when this happened? Did they even seem to realize what was going on?
They didn't realize what was going on.
They just continued.
Because they got jumped so many times. Fans used to jump into the ring at the amphitheater on a daily basis. So I've seen fans jump in. One thing I have to say about the amphitheater, and I was a little pup at the time, to me, they had the world's longest bar at the main.
They did.
It was long, and we're talking hard liquor, and the matches started at 8:30, and by the time 8:30 came around, the majority of the fans were feeling no pain.
Oh yeah, they were liquored up.
They were totally boozed up, and
but it was kind of weird because it was right by the settlement room,
right,
for the State Athletic Commission. So you walked into this big room here at the back of the arena, and one side is a bar that ran the entire length of it.
Right, it had to be like 40 feet long.
And there was also an entrance up to the dressing rooms,
right,
back behind the bar.
Right.
And then off to here was this little fenced-off area, kind of. And the settlement room for the State Athletic Commission for the House was right there. I remember that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, you know, getting back to the wrestlers were so used to outrageous things happening at the amphitheater that they weren't shocked because it was really nothing out of the norm at the time.
Heenan once told a story about sort of illustrating A, the craziness of the fans, and B, sort of his experiences with Bockwinkel. He said that, and I don't remember where the show was, but he was actually involved in a tag match with Bockwinkel, and a fan shot him with a BB gun.
Right.
And he was always told from day one, don't sell the fans. Don't let them know that anything they've done has gotten to you. So he's desperately trying not to give any indication that he's in any kind of pain from this thing that's just shot him. So as he's standing on the ring apron, and apparently Nick Bockwinkel turns to him and just says, "Something wrong?" And Bobby's response apparently was, "No, Nick, I always piss my pants at 9:30 on a Tuesday." So it obviously was a very different time. And we've heard stories like from other areas of the country. I know Blackjack Lanza was stabbed, I believe, several times in Boston.
Mulligan, they walked around him with a carpet knife.
Okay.
Turned him babyface that night.
Okay.
He never healed again.
Bill Miller wrestled, I believe he was the first AWA champion as Dr. M. And when he was unmasked, he got stabbed.
Really?
He got stabbed the night he got unmasked. So stabbing,
as he was leaving the ring?
As he was leaving the ring, he got somebody.
That was very common. Papa was stabbed 7 times in his career. Randy, you were big in Memphis, man.
Yeah.
How much? You know what kind of nonsense?
Oh, it's crazy.
There was. Oh, by the way, that's a wrestling life from back in the days that we're talking about now.
Pete's favorites on here, Mighty Igor.
Lucky Number program.
Mighty Igor.
Where is that? Where from your the Wrestling Hall of Fame? He's got
the certificate.
He's got a certificate.
My original membership.
And it's
to the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
It looks as good as the day you got it.
Signed by Sharon and Bob.
I kept it in a box. in the back of the
It's
house.
not yellow?
No.
Was this that little room? That
The
was
little room
described
at
the back
the
of the
little
amphitheater?
room.
To call it a
In the
room would
corner.
be kind,
It,
though.
it wasn't a room. It was boards put up, 8-foot boards with,
Yeah.
with passageways and photos and lighting.
And they charge you $2 to go.
$2 to get in.
Yeah,
$2.
And they had a couple of projectors
And
going.
then, they had one projector going, and
Bare wall where they just put pictures up,
Right.
slap pictures up.
And they would sell things in the corner. They would
Yeah.
sell T-shirts or more programs or more Hall of Fame memberships.
Did
or
Luce
something.
get all of that money, or did he have?
That was his.
That was
Yeah,
That was his idea, so he got the money.
He made out like a bandit.
Yeah, that was all his. That's how he profited.
I remember when they used to
Then he had all
induct.
the induction ceremonies.
They
and
had the
stuff.
induction ceremonies in the Hall of Fame, and they had hundreds of people crammed into it. I mean, fire code had to have been paid off. The fire department for that to go. That wouldn't happen now. That the way that he had that set up.
No.
Exactly.
Well, because it wasn't a permanent structure, if anything happened, you probably could have knocked down the wall in
about 10 seconds.
less than 10 seconds.
Walked out.
And walk out the door, and walk out to the nearest exit. Because those were just partitions. That's
Yeah.
what they were. They were like 8 or 9 foot partitions
And it was set up in such a way like a mouse.
to make it look like an art museum almost.
The other
with
thing
photos.
he had that I remember at the amphitheater that he always hawked to death was the lucky number program. You got the lucky number
Right,
program.
right there, yeah.
You got the ring. What do you get
It's on
first?
there.
You got ringside seats if you got.
For the next show.
I always heard that was a gimmick.
No,
I don't think it
I don't
was.
think
You think it was legit?
I think it was
Yeah.
legit. I saw people. I've
saw
been there
people that won
for
it?
many. Yeah, I've seen people win. I saw little kids win, which kind of me off back then.
Yeah.
Because they got their dad's ticket, and I paid my money out of my own pocket, and I never won.
I remember it was $5 ringside. That's what I paid.
$5 ringside.
$5 ringside. I always got first row because I would buy my ticket to the following show during the intermission. They'd start selling the tickets. So I
You
go buy.
were hooked.
I was totally hooked.
Yeah.
You were really
I
hooked.
went from freshman to senior year. I did not miss one show at the amphitheater. And then, later on I got married, and my wife told me that it was either her or wrestling, and I said, give me a week to think about it. And now I'm still hooked on wrestling, but I mean, that was a magical time that it could never be replaced. It's like Humpty Dumpty, you can never put it back together again.
No.
It was a special moment, like Ed said, that it was an event. Just going to the amphitheater, I used to take the Halstead Street bus, just going there, the closer you got to the stink at the stockyards, especially
Exactly.
on a summer's day in August, the closer you got to the stink and the smell of beer and stale urine.
It made you wanna get
and,
faster.
you just couldn't wait to get in there.
Couldn't wait to grab a hot dog.
You just couldn't wait.
One quick little interesting sort of fact I sort of found out here. You talk about spending $5 for ringside and things
Right.
like that. Sort of the average gates that these guys were making at the time, and these were general gates around like 31,000 for a sold out show of about 10,000 fans, things like that. The most interesting thing I found was that it's around here somewhere. Here we go. At the time, September 4th, 1911. Frank Gotch versus George Hagensmith. It was the second match that happened. This was a match that honestly captured people's imaginations. They were in Comiskey Park. There was a crowd claimed at about 35,000 people. At the time, set a record gate of $87,000. As a comparison, Mania 24, with an attendance of around 74,000, brought in ticket sales of 5.85 million. So it just kind of shows how much wrestling has changed from, and now that was much further
It's
back
our
in
world
time.
that's changed.
The world has changed very much too, absolutely. And you've talked about sort of the amphitheater as this event, this place where you went to see
Mecca.
things. I found one show. I don't even know if you were there. It sounded kind of interesting. It happened Friday, April 1st in 1960. The main event was described as Johnny Valentine and Bearcat Wright going to a draw in 96 minutes.
I wasn't there.
Weren't there. Supposedly, between 500 and several thousand fans were turned away, and police were called to Emergency Plan 3. 27 police squads were called to the scene, and about 300 fans charged the barricades trying to get into this place. Why? And
When was that now?
This was in 1960.
In April?
April of 1960.
April.
And I saw Johnny Valentine listed on a number of cards. What was Johnny Valentine to wrestling?
Johnny Valentine was in my opinion, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, period. He generated heat like nobody else did. And I remember, and I wrote about it on Chris's board, when Valentine was the heel and Crusher was the face. And he hit Crusher over the head with a chair. Now, in the golden age of wrestling, a chair shot was a rare event compared to this now. You go to an indie show now, there's like 6 chair shots.
In the opener.
12,
yeah, right.
12 ref bumps.
14 DDTs.
You know, but in those days, a chair shot was a rare event. And also in those days, when a wrestler got a chair shot, he sold it. He went down like he was dead.
But he wasn't getting up.
He wasn't getting up. I mean, that stupid thing with Cactus Jack, Big Foley in a rock where he got hit 13 times.
Yeah.
Most ridiculous thing I ever saw in my life. Crusher went down like, you know, a sack.
Gunshot, yeah.
Didn't move. The police had to literally get Valentine out of the ring.
Absolutely.
Literally had to get him out of the ring.
Absolutely.
And from what I heard, he had to stay in the dressing room for a couple of hours.
Yep.
Little people left.
That
was called getting white heat. That was the type of heat that was called. As we were talking about, you know, the show itself being an event, actually even going there, the anticipation of going there, and all of that, the build-up. I would get out of there, I was exhausted. Just exhausted. I hadn't done a damn thing but watch and scream.
Yeah, you just got worked up.
Yeah, you're just so worked up.
You suspended your disbelief.
Without a problem.
Even though you knew what you were watching was not on the up and up.
Or at least at the time when you were a kid, you felt it wasn't.
Yeah, and even though
you were starting to get into that area where I don't know.
They made it look so good that even though
they
you
were
knew
artists,
they were artists.
Artists at their craft.
It was like watching, you know, Pavarotti on stage. I mean, it was just
it's like watching a great singer, a great actor, a great band, anything. There's something about that particular person or that group that makes them what they are, and for everybody to feel, you know, about them the same as far as their capabilities and, you know, the artistry that they put out and stuff. But like you said, chair shot.
That was a rare thing.
The whole thing was chair shots, cage matches, strap matches, all of these type of things were basically to blow off.
Right, the blow off.
The blow off of a feud, or a chair shot's the start of a feud. You know, it was an event when that happened.
It was like you saw something special.
Yeah, exactly. It's like seeing somebody shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, it was something so special to see that you remembered it. And now the chair shot is meaningless because it's used so often. It's totally
right. The guys don't sell it.
Another thing that I find is meaningless: the heel turn. That was a rare event in those days. Compared to, I mean, how many times has Triple H turned already?
Yeah.
You know, how many times has Ric Flair turned? In those days, you know, when somebody did a turn, it was a big deal. And like you said, it was the start of a feud. And there's something that's lacking today that they had then. It's called ring psychology. And these guys really, you know,
there is nothing.
They knew how to build it.
They knew how to build it, and I remember seeing matches where the two guys wouldn't hook up for 10 minutes.
Right.
And the crowd was going nuts.
Exactly.
The crowd was on their feet. They were going nuts, and these guys didn't even hook up.
I'd take 8 minutes to take my jacket off when I was working.
That's because it was difficult.
Well, it was difficult. I couldn't reach the snap at the back. How do women do that?
I don't know.
But, yeah, that was the whole thing. Was like complete.
Yeah, you had these people.
You didn't have to do 52 backflips and cartwheels, you know, from a beam across the truss. You know.
Since we're there, let me ask you guys: don't you love that? Like when they do all that big stuff, 8, 10 things in a row, and each time they're jamming the guy, not taking care of him. Then when they get him up on the ropes, they hit him like a little girl.
Exactly.
You know, they drop him on their head, but I'm afraid to hit him. You know?
The bruiser would throw a punch.
Yeah.
It looked like you were dead.
Yeah.
You had to kill him.
Yeah.
And it was like, man, it was just right there. He'd jack if he wanted to.
Sure.
You know, or if he had a reason to.
Yeah.
So with Cholak. Cholak was nobody to screw with.
Did he break Valiant's leg or pelvis?
He dropped him on his head. Would you like to hear the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll work.
Moose.
That's when he stopped taking bumps and doing
Moose was a pretty easygoing guy.
Yeah. But he's a klutz.
You know, if you gave him food,
He was happy.
it was just the happiest thing in the world.
Like a goldfish.
His car I forget what kind of, I think he drove a big Lincoln. And the car was just littered in the back with chicken boxes and bones. It was like a no man's land back there. And he and Handsome Jimmy were going down to the G.A.O.W. Auditorium in St. Louis. And back then in our day, if you were late meeting up with the boys, you'd get left. Didn't matter if you were going to a shot or coming back. If you can't be where you got to be, they give you 15 minutes. And bang, you weren't there. It was like, enjoy yourself, you're an adult. So Handsome is late getting to Cholak. And Cholak's crabby. You know, he's not a real young man anymore. He had his aches and his pains, and I don't know, maybe he didn't have the right box of chicken, whatever it was. But Valiant finally gets there. And they're supposed to split the drive. And Valiant goes, hey, Daddy, how'd Jimmy work you? And Jimmy, I think he works in his sleep.
Brother,
I swear, brother, yeah, oh man, you were with me from the beginning. Oh man, what? What? He gets in the car, and Cholak's half down. And he says, oh, Moose, man, I got to lay me down just a little bit, brother. I'm tired. So he goes to sleep.
A little shut-eye, brother.
A little shut-eye. Yeah. Handsome got to lay down, man. It was Handsome back in those days. He wasn't quite, he hadn't gone south yet and become wild-eyed crazy. And Moose is steaming. Just steaming. Moose drove the whole way.
Oh, man.
And one of the matches was him and Valiant. Yeah. So from what I understand, I wasn't there, he had Jimmy on the outside on the apron and picked him up like this, just let him go. Jeez. And would quit tang, man, and knocked him like till Thursday. I believe he got a concussion and was like screwed up for a while. Yeah. But that was all because he wouldn't take his turn driving.
Mercy,
that was his payback. Mercy.
I like when Valiant played his New York gimmick in the beginning, from New York City, and I saw him in Memphis when he used that New York City gimmick.
As a baby or heel?
He was a heel.
Yeah,
when he first came there.
Yeah, they just couldn't stand him. And then later on, he became the Boogie Woogie Man. Total metamorphosis. I mean, then he was beloved by these people, the same people that would have killed him if they had the chance, because he used to talk down to them, the rednecks, and and he.
Well, they had some sort of record there too with the Valiant brothers against Dundee and Lawler for years. Some sort of solid record on Monday nights too.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah. And again, on a Monday night.
Monday nights.
I mean, these companies today on a Saturday night can't draw 200 people. But on a Monday night, you could sell out a 12,000-seat arena.
The
turn people away. Yeah. Turn them away.
Turn them away.
Absolutely. And their TV ratings beat the networks consistently. So that's what aggravates me to death, and what caused me to start the thread is when these people say, "Well, Vince saved wrestling. He made the ratings what they were." That's a lot of crap. And in the 60s and 70s, a lot of times wrestling was like the #1 show on television.
Yeah. Or Memphis did live TV simply because it was economically sound.
Their TV on like Saturday was the #1 show.
And it was live. It was live in the studio.
Freddie Flashy used to talk about in California when TVs first came out that the TV store would come back.
That's right.
They would close.
Yeah.
Right.
They would come back at night, right before wrestling came on, and they'd turn on all of their sets in the window, and the streets would be full of people watching the wrestling on TV from a store's TV. That's amazing.
I read that.
Yeah. Was this the material coming off of the Dumont network? Was this Kohler's material from the Amphitheater?
Right. And another thing they do with the Marigold, you mentioned the Marigold earlier. A Marigold was a place they shot TV.
Right. Yeah.
As well. And that went everywhere. Chicago was the hub for TV. Everything was shot out of here. Jack Brickhouse.
Bob Elston did wrestling.
Bob Elston, Jack Brickhouse.
Bruce Roberts.
Right.
The late Bruce Roberts did it.
Hugely famous people that were involved, from Chicago back then.
I remember Elson
wrestling.
interviewing Buddy Rogers in the ring a few times, and he played it straight.
Oh,
Elson played it straight. And now the announcer is kind of like the clown character.
Yeah, pretty much.
He has to be a personality, but Rogers was just
Consummate, yeah.
Oh, Rogers, there ever has been, up to now, been a wrestler of his caliber. Rogers could actually, he couldn't shoot. He's not a shooter. He was a worker. But he was the absolute best worker I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, look at the carcass on the body back then. He's so ahead of his time.
He had a great athletic body.
Yeah.
Well muscled,
Amazing.
tan,
For the
the
time,
bleached
right?
blonde hair. Everywhere he went,
Jesus.
it was in a suit and tie. You know, I mean, that was a champion.
The strut.
Classic
You know,
guy.
his strut. Oh, just
The Rogers
his
strut.
walk. He could walk to the ring and get heat. He didn't have to touch an opponent. He could stand there and turn his head.
and drive him nuts.
And, it was amazing.
And then his manager, Bobby
And
Davis.
Bobby Davis was even better.
I was going to ask about Bobby Davis. Now, how did that dynamic fit together? Because I've heard you talk about how good Buddy was and what he could do. And I've seen footage of Bobby Davis when he was actually in D.C. managing the Graham brothers.
Right.
Just walking to the ring, the place wanted to kill.
Exactly.
How did he elevate that?
The whole thing
Buddy?
was they got hooked up on the East Coast. Rogers was a guy out of New Jersey, and they got hooked up out there, you know, through McMahon Senior and such, and we're on those cars in D.C. and all along down the East Shore and all that stuff. And Rogers, as a phenomenal of a worker as he was, and as phenomenal of a mind he had for working a match with a guy or working a program. Like if you were Buddy Rogers and you were going to be working with me, I'm about to put a ton of money in my pocket because that's how good Rogers was. A lot of people hated Buddy Rogers in the business. Tons of them hated him because, number one, they were jealous of his ability.
They weren't businessmen.
You know, they weren't businessmen. Rogers knew how to make money and knew what would draw.
How to draw money.
And knew how to put it together in the ring so it would draw, and that you would look like a god right up until the time he screwed you. Right up until that time. One of the things that I don't think Rogers did very well was a direct interview. You can see that if you watch the Rogers OConnor match from Comiskey Park, and I was there. Were you there too?
I was there also, yes.
Yeah, I was there. I was sitting at first base.
I had lousy seats.
I was at first base in
My man wanted to...
what are they, the box seats that run along the field there?
Yeah.
I was right on first base box seats. Bobby Davis came out to the ring with him. And I think they sent Bobby Davis back.
They did.
I don't think he was out there for the match. And so Rogers did the in-ring interview at the end. You know, and he was respectful, if you listen to it.
Right.
You know, it was, yeah, thank you, you know, and...
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
The only heel thing he did is it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah.
And that was it. Bobby Davis, on the other hand, knew how to push buttons and get real heat. Some of those old glory days of wrestling tapes, there's one where he talks about, had to be right after he and Rogers got together, because Rogers was a U.S. champion at the time, and Bobby Davis starts doing this interview and going off, and in the middle of it, something I stole from him later on when I managed, he made a comment that literally he could rest in a hammock by the ring because Buddy Rogers didn't need him. He says, I'm here to point out his faults, and since he's been with me, he has no faults.
Sure.
You know, I mean, he knew how to get to the people,
Get in there, yeah.
and that was his magic.
Well, look at Johnny.
And now when you combine that with other personality that interjects, interferes, and can talk, and looks like the kind of guy you would like to slap several times.
Slap him, yeah.
I wanted to,
want
just in that one clip.
And then you bring in Buddy Rogers, who's this gorgeous monster of a, I mean, he's gigantic in stature, but you know, he had it all. Talk about a guy that had it all, he had it all. Put those two things together, boy, you had some real money.
Yeah, well, what was that Comiskey Park? It was like 36,000 people?
At that time, it was the biggest show.
Right.
Attendance-wise and money.
And again, no internet, basically it was word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
And they got 30
And their TV program.
38,622.
So
Thank you
that
very
shows
much.
you the power of TV.
Yep.
What was that match? Tends to be sort of this match that's always thrown out more to people when they're investigating the history of wrestling now. What was that match, and why did it happen? What was its importance, and why is it endured so much?
In my opinion, it was actually the second time that the NWA put the title on a heel. Okay. Prior to that, and Pat O'Connor, God bless him, I saw him wrestle from the time I was a little kid until the late 70s when he was way past his prime. I think Rogers took wrestling to the next level at that point, like being a champion, because as Ed said, this guy drew money.
Perspective?
Entertainment
Absolutely.
perspective.
Okay.
He drew money, and I think the NWA promoters decided to go that route, and it was like the start of having heel champions as long as the heels meant money.
Exactly.
Before that, you had a lot of boring NWA champions. Some of them I
Who
saw.
says was a great wrestler? It was boring as hell.
How about Whipper Watson?
Yeah, Whipper. A nice guy.
Yeah,
Wonderful guy.
But he put you to sleep.
Exactly.
Bill
Pat
Cosby.
O'Connor in his prime.